The Five Love Languages with Dr. Gary Chapman, well known for his marriage counseling and marriage enrichment. Topics in his book: what happens to love after the wedding, keeping the love tank full, falling in love. Love language number 1, words of affirmation. 2, quality time. 3, receiving gifts. 4, acts of service. 5, physical touch. Love is a choice. Love makes the difference. Children and love languages. Our topic today: quality time. Quality time with Dr. Gary Chapman. We begin. I should have picked up on Betty Jo's primary love language from the beginning. What was she saying on that spring night when I visited her and Bill in Little Rock? Bill is a good provider, but he doesn't spend any time with me. What good is the house and the recreational vehicle and all the other things if we don't ever enjoy them together? What was her desire? Quality time with Bill. She wanted him to focus on her, to give her time, to do things with her. By quality time, I mean giving someone your undivided attention. I don't mean sitting on the couch watching television together. When you spend time that way, ABC or NBC or Fox has your attention, not your spouse. What I mean is sitting on the couch with the television off, looking at each other and talking, giving each other your undivided attention. It means taking a walk, just the two of you, or going out to eat and looking at each other and talking. Have you ever noticed that in a restaurant you can almost always tell the difference between a dating couple and a married couple? Dating couples look at each other and talk. Married couples sit there and gaze around the restaurant. You'd think they went there to eat. When I sit on the couch with my wife and give her 20 minutes of my undivided attention, and she does the same for me, we are giving each other 20 minutes of life. We will never have those 20 minutes again. We are giving our lives to each other, and it is a powerful emotional communicator of love. Keep in mind, one medicine cannot cure all diseases. In my advice to Bill and Betty Jo, I made a serious mistake. I assumed that words of affirmation would mean as much to Betty Jo as they would to Bill. I had hoped that if each of them would give adequate verbal affirmation, the emotional climate would change and both of them would begin to feel loved. It worked for Bill. He began to feel more positive about Betty Jo. He began to sense genuine appreciation for his hard work. But it had not worked for Betty Jo. Words of affirmation were not her primary love language. Her language was quality time. I got back on the phone and thanked Bill for his efforts in the past 2 months. I told him that he had done a good job of verbally affirming Betty Jo and that she had heard the affirmations. But, Dr. Chapman, he said, she is still not very happy. I don't think things are much better for her. You're right, I said, and I think I know why. The problem is that I suggested the wrong love language. Bill hadn't the foggiest idea what I meant. I explained that what makes one person feel loved emotionally is not always the thing that makes another person feel loved emotionally. He agreed that his language was words of affirmation. He told me how much that had meant to him as a boy, and how good he felt when Betty Jo expressed appreciation for the things he did. I explained that Betty Jo's language was not words of affirmation, but quality time. I explained the concept of giving someone your undivided attention, not talking to her while you read the newspaper or watch television, but looking into her eyes, giving her your full attention, doing something with her that she enjoys doing, and doing it wholeheartedly. Like going to the symphony with her, he said. I could tell the lights were coming on in Little Rock. Dr. Chapman, that is what she has always complained about. I didn't do things with her. I didn't spend any time with her. We used to go places and do things before we were married, she said. But now you're too busy. That's her love language, all right. No question about it. But Dr. Chapman, what am I going to do? My job is so demanding. Tell me about it, I said. And for the next 10 minutes, he gave me the history of his climb up the organizational ladder, of how hard he had worked and how proud he was of his accomplishments. He told me of his dreams for the future and that he knew that within the next 5 years, he would be where he wanted to be. Do you want to be there alone? Or do you want to be there with Betty Jo and the children? I asked. I want her to be with me, Dr. Chapman. That's why it always hurts so much when she criticizes me for spending time on the job. I'm doing it for us. I wanted her to be part of it, but she's always so negative. Are you beginning to see why she was so negative, Bill? I asked. Her love language is quality time. You have given her so little time that her love tank is empty. She doesn't feel secure in your love. Therefore, she has lashed out at what was taking your time, in her mind, your job. She doesn't really hate your job. She hates the fact that she feels so little love coming from you. There's only one answer, Bill, and it's costly. You have to make time for Betty Jo. You have to love her in the right love language. I know you're right, Dr. Chapman. Where do I begin? Do you have your legal pad handy? The one in which we made the list of the positive things about Betty Jo? It's right here. Good. We're going to make another list. What are some of the things that you know Betty Jo would like you to do with her? Things she has mentioned through the years. Here is Bill's list. Things Betty Jo would like. Taking our RV and spending a weekend in the mountains, sometimes with the children and sometimes just the two of us. Meet her for lunch at a nice restaurant or sometimes even at McDonald's. Get a babysitter and take her out to dinner, just the two of us. When I come home at night, sit down and talk with her about my day and listen as she tells me about her day. And she doesn't want me to watch TV while we're trying to talk. Spend time talking with the children about their school experiences. Spend time playing games with the children. Go on a picnic with her and the children on Sunday and don't complain about the ants and the flies. Take a vacation with the family at least once a year. Go walking with her and talk as we walk. Don't walk ahead of her. Those are the things she's talked about through the years, he said. You know what I'm going to suggest, don't you, Bill? Do them, he said. That's right, one a week for the next 2 months. Where will you find the time? You will make it. You are a wise man, I continued. You would not be where you are if you were not a good decision maker. You have the ability to plan your life and to include Betty Jo in your plans. I know, he said. I can do it. And Bill, this does not have to diminish your vocational goals. It just means that when you get to the top, Betty Jo and the children will be with you. That's what I want more than anything. Whether I'm at the top or not, I want her to be happy, and I want to enjoy life with her and the children. The years have come and gone. Bill and Betty Jo have gone to the top and back, but the important thing is that they have done it together. The children left the nest, and Bill and Betty Jo agree that these are their best years ever. Bill has become an avid symphony fan, and Betty Jo has made an unending list in her legal pad of things she appreciates about Bill. He never tires of hearing them. He has now started his own company and is near the top again. His job is no longer a threat to Betty Jo. She's excited about it and encourages him. She knows that she's number one in his life. Her love tank is full, and if it begins to get empty, she knows that a simple request on her part will get her Bill's undivided attention. Togetherness. A central aspect of quality time is togetherness. I do not mean proximity. Two people sitting in the same room are in close proximity, but they are not necessarily together. Togetherness has to do with focused attention. When a father is sitting on the floor rolling a ball to his 2-year-old, his attention is not focused on the ball, but on his child. For that brief moment, however long it lasts, they are together. If, however, the father is talking on the phone while he rolls the ball, his attention is diluted. Some husbands and wives think they're spending time together, when in reality they are only living in close proximity. A husband who is watching sports on television while he talks to his wife is not giving her quality time, because she does not have his full attention. Quality time does not mean that we have to spend our together moments gazing into each other's eyes. It means that we're doing something together and that we're giving our full attention to the other person. The activity in which we are both engaged is incidental. The important thing, emotionally, is that we're spending focused time with each other. The activity is a vehicle that creates this sense of togetherness. The important thing about the father rolling the ball to the 2-year-old is not the activity itself, but the emotions that are created between the father and his child. Similarly, a husband and wife playing tennis together. If it is genuine quality time, will focus not on the game, but on the fact that they are spending time together. What happens on the emotional level is what matters. Our spending time together in a common pursuit communicates that we care about each other, that we enjoy being with each other, that we like to do things together. Quality conversation. Like words of affirmation, the language of quality time also has many dialects. One of the most common dialects is that of quality conversation. By quality conversation, I mean sympathetic dialogue, where two individuals are sharing their experiences, thoughts, feelings, and desires in a friendly, uninterrupted context. Most individuals who complain that their spouse does not talk do not literally mean that he or she never says a word. They mean that they seldom take part in sympathetic dialogue. If your spouse's primary love language is quality time, such dialogue is crucial to his or her emotional sense of being loved. Quality conversation is quite different from the first love language. Words of affirmation focus on what we are saying, whereas quality conversation focuses on what we are hearing. Saying, hearing. If I am sharing my love for you by means of quality time, and we are going to spend that time in conversation, it means I will focus on drawing you out, listening sympathetically to what you have to say. I will ask questions, not in a badgering manner, but with a genuine desire to understand your thoughts and feelings and desires. I met Patrick when he was 43 and had been married for 17 years. I remember him because his first words were so dramatic. He sat in the leather chair in my office, and after briefly introducing himself, he leaned forward and said with great emotion, "Dr. Chapman, I have been a fool, a real fool." "What has led you to that conclusion?" I asked. "I've been married for 17 years, he said, "and my wife has left me. Now I realize what a fool I've been." I repeated my original question. "In what way have you been a fool?" My wife would come home from work and tell me about the problems in her office. I would listen to her and then tell her what I thought she should do. I always gave her advice. I told her she had to confront the problem. Problems don't go away. You have to talk with the people involved or your supervisor. You have to deal with problems. The next day, she would come home from work and tell me about the same problems. I would ask her if she did what I had suggested the day before. She would shake her head and say no. So, I'd repeat the advice. She would come home the next day and tell me about the same problem. Again, I would ask her if she had done what I had suggested. She would shake her head and say no. After 3 or 4 nights of that, I would get angry. I would tell her not to expect any sympathy from me if she wasn't willing to take the advice I was giving her. She didn't have to live under that kind of stress and pressure. She could solve the problem if she would simply do what I told her. It hurt me to see her living under such stress because I knew she didn't have to. The next time she'd bring up the problem, I would say, "I don't want to hear about it. I've told you what you need to do. If you're not going to listen to my advice, I don't want to hear it." I would withdraw and go about my business. "What a fool I was," he said. "What a fool. Now I realize that she didn't want advice when she told me about her struggles at work. She wanted sympathy. She wanted sympathy. She wanted me to listen, to give her attention, to let her know that I could understand the hurt, the stress, the pressure. She wanted to know that I loved her and that I was with her. She didn't want advice. She wanted to know that I understood. But I never tried to understand. I was too busy giving advice. What a fool. And now she's gone. Why can't you see these things when you're going through them? He asked. I was blind to what was going on. Only now do I understand how I failed her. Patrick's wife had been pleading for quality conversation. Emotionally, she longed for him to focus attention on her by listening to her pain and frustration. Patrick was not focusing on listening, but on speaking. He listened only long enough to hear the problem and formulate a solution. He didn't listen long enough or well enough to hear her cry for support and understanding. Many of us are like Patrick. We are trained to analyze problems and create solutions. We forget that marriage is a relationship, not a project to be completed or a problem to solve. A relationship calls for sympathetic listening with a view to understanding the other person's thoughts, feelings, and desires. We must be willing to give advice, but only when it's requested, and never in a condescending manner. Most of us have little training in listening. We are far more efficient in thinking and speaking. Learning to listen may be as difficult as learning a foreign language, but learn we must if we want to communicate love. That is especially true if your spouse's primary love language is quality time and his or her dialect is quality conversation. Fortunately, numerous books and articles have been written on developing the art of listening. I will not seek to repeat what is written elsewhere, but suggest the following summary of practical tips. 1. Maintain eye contact when your spouse is talking. That keeps your mind from wandering and communicates that he, she has your full attention. 2. Don't listen to your spouse and do something else at the same time. Remember, quality time is giving someone your undivided attention. If you are watching, reading, or doing something else in which you are keenly interested and cannot turn from immediately, tell your spouse the truth. A positive approach might be, I know you're trying to talk to me and I'm interested, but I want to give you my full attention. I can't do it right now, but if you give me 10 minutes to finish this, I'll sit down and listen to you. Most spouses will respect such a request. Number 3, listen for feelings. Listen for feelings. Ask yourself, what emotion is my spouse experiencing? When you think you have the answer, confirm it. For example, it sounds to me like you're feeling disappointed because I forgot. That gives him the chance to clarify his feelings. It also communicates that you are listening intently to what he is saying. 4, observe body language. Clenched fists, trembling hands, tears, furrowed brows, and eye movement may give you clues as to what the other is feeling. Sometimes body language speaks one message, while words speak another. Ask for clarification to make sure you know what she's really thinking and feeling. 5. Refuse to interrupt. Recent research has indicated that the average individual listens for only 17 seconds before interrupting and interjecting his own ideas. 17 seconds. If I give you my undivided attention while you're talking, I will refrain from defending myself or hurling accusations at you or dogmatically stating my position. My goal is to discover your thoughts and feelings. My objective is not to defend myself or to set you straight. No, it is to understand you. Learning to talk. Quality conversation requires not only sympathetic listening, but also self-revelation. When a wife says, "I wish my husband would talk," I never know what he's thinking or feeling. She's pleading for intimacy. She wants to feel close to her husband, but how can she feel close to someone whom she doesn't know? In order for her to feel loved, he must learn to reveal himself. If her primary love language is quality time, and her dialect is quality conversation, her emotional love tank will never be filled until he tells her his thoughts and feelings. Self-revelation does not come easy for some of us. Many adults grew up in homes where the expression of thoughts and feelings was not encouraged but condemned. To request a toy was to receive a lecture on the sad state of family finances. The child went away feeling guilty for having the desire, and he quickly learned not to express his desires. When he expressed anger, the parents responded with harsh and condemning words. Thus, the child learned that expressing angry feelings is not appropriate. If the child was made to feel guilty for expressing disappointment at not being able to go to the store with his father, he learned to hold his disappointment inside. By the time we reach adulthood, many of us have learned to deny our feelings. We are no longer in touch with our emotional selves. A wife says to her husband, "How did you feel about what Don did?" And the husband responds, "I think he was wrong. He should have." But he's not telling her his feelings. He's voicing his thoughts. Perhaps he has reason to feel angry, hurt, or disappointed. But he has lived so long in the world of thought that he does not acknowledge his feelings. When he decides to learn the language of quality conversation, it will be like learning a foreign language. The place to begin is by getting in touch with his feelings, becoming aware that he is an emotional creature, in spite of the fact that he has denied that part of his life. If you need to learn the language of quality conversation, begin by noting the emotions you feel away from home. Carry a small notepad and keep it with you daily. 3 times each day, ask yourself, what emotions have I felt in the last 3 hours? What did I feel on the way to work when the driver behind me was riding my bumper? What did I feel when I stopped at the gas station and the automatic pump did not shut off and the side of the car was covered in gas? What did I feel when I got to the office and found that my secretary had been assigned to a special work project for the morning? What did I feel when my supervisor told me that the project I was working on had to be completed in 3 days when I thought I had another 2 weeks? Write down your feelings in the notepad and a word or two to help. Your list may look like this: event, feelings; tailgater, angry; gas station, very upset; no secretary, disappointed; work due in 3 days, frustration, anxious. Do that exercise 3 times a day, and you will develop an awareness of your emotional nature. Using your notepad, communicate your feelings and the events briefly with your spouse as many days as possible. Let me say that again. Using your notepad, communicate your emotions and the events briefly with your spouse as many days as possible. In a few weeks, you will become comfortable expressing your emotions with her, with him, or her. Eventually, you will feel comfortable discussing your emotions toward your spouse, the children, and events that occur within the home. Remember, emotions themselves are neither good nor bad. They are simply our psychological responses to the events of life. Based on our thoughts and emotions, we eventually make decisions. When the tailgater was following you on the highway and you felt angry, perhaps you had these thoughts: I wish he would lay off. I wish he would pass me. If I thought I wouldn't get caught, I would press the accelerator and leave him in the twilight. I should slam on my brakes and let his insurance company buy me a new car. Maybe I'll pull off the road and let him pass. Eventually you made some decisions, or the other driver backed off, turned, or passed you, and you arrived safely at work. In each of life's events, we have emotions, thoughts, desires, and eventually actions. It is the expression of that process that we call self-revelation. If you chose to learn the language, dialect of quality conversation, that is the learning road you must follow. Personality types. Not all of us are out of touch with our emotions, but when it comes to talking, all of us are affected by our personality. I have observed 2 basic personality types. The first I call the Dead Sea. In the little nation of Israel, the Sea of Galilee flows south by way of the Jordan River into the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea goes nowhere. It receives, but it does not give. This personality type receives many experiences, emotions, and thoughts throughout the day. They have a large reservoir where they store that information, and they are perfectly happy not to talk. If you say to a Dead Sea personality, "What's wrong? Why aren't you talking tonight?" he will probably answer, "Nothing's wrong. What makes you think something's wrong?" And that response is perfectly honest. He is content not to talk. He could drive from Chicago to Detroit and never say a word and be perfectly happy. On the other hand is the babbling brook. For this personality, whatever enters into the eye gate or the ear gate comes out the mouth gate, and there are seldom 60 seconds between the two. Whatever they see, whatever they hear, they tell. In fact, If no one is home to talk to, they will call someone else. Do you know what I saw? Do you know what I heard? If they can't get someone on the telephone, they may talk to themselves because they have no reservoir. Many times a Dead Sea marries a babbling brook. That happens because when they're dating, it's a very attractive match. If you're a Dead Sea and you date a babbling brook, you'll have a wonderful evening. You don't have to think, how will I get the conversation started tonight? How will I keep the conversation flowing? In fact, you don't have to think at all. All you have to do is nod your head and say, uh-huh, and she will fill up the whole evening. And you will go home saying, what a wonderful person. On the other hand, if you're a babbling brook and you date a Dead Sea, you will have an equally wonderful evening because Dead Seas are the world's best listeners. You will babble for 3 hours, and he will listen intently to you, and you will go home saying, what a wonderful person. You attract each other. But 5 years after marriage, the babbling brook wakes up one morning and says, we've been married 5 years and I don't know him. You attract each other, yes. But the Dead Sea is saying, I know her too well. The attraction is gone. If she would stop the flow and give me a break, I wish she would. The good news is that the Dead Sea can learn to talk and the babbling brook can learn to listen. We are influenced by our personality, but not controlled by it. One way to learn new patterns is to establish a daily sharing time, in which each of you will talk about 3 things that happened to you that day and how you feel about them. I call that the daily minimum requirement for a healthy marriage. If you will start with a daily minimum in a few weeks or months, you may find quality conversation flowing more freely between you. Quality activities. In addition to the basic love language of quality time, or giving your spouse undivided attention, is another dialect called quality activities. At a recent marriage seminar, I asked couples to complete the following sentence. I feel most loved by my husband or wife when. Here is the response of a 29-year-old husband who had been married for 8 years. I feel most loved by my wife when we do things together. Things I like to do and things she likes to do. We talk more. It sort of feels like we're dating again. That is a typical response of individuals whose primary love language is quality time. The emphasis is on being together, doing things together, giving each other undivided attention. Quality activities may include anything in which one or both of you has an interest. The emphasis is not on what you are doing, but on why you are doing it. The purpose is to experience something together, to walk away from it feeling, he cares about me. He is willing to do something with me that I enjoy, and he did it with a positive attitude. That is love. And for some people, it is love's loudest voice. Tracy grew up with the symphony. Throughout her childhood, the house was filled with classical music, and at least once a year she accompanied her parents to the symphony. Larry on the other hand, grew up on country and Western music. Now, he never actually attended a concert, but the radio was always on, tuned to the country station. The symphony he called elevator music. Had he not married Tracy, he could have lived his life without ever attending the symphony. Before they were married, while he was still in the obsessed state of being in love, he went to the symphony. But even in the euphoric emotional state, his attitude was, "You call this stuff music?" After marriage, that was one experience he never expected to repeat. When, however, he discovered several years later that quality time was Tracy's primary love language and that she especially liked the dialect of quality activities and that attending the symphony was one of those activities, he chose to go with an enthusiastic spirit. His purpose was clear. It was not to attend the symphony, but to love Tracy and to speak her language loudly. In time, he did come to appreciate the symphony and even occasionally to enjoy a movement or two. It's true, he may never become a symphony lover, but he has become proficient at loving Tracy. Quality activities may include such activities as gardening, visiting flea markets, antique shopping, listening to music, picnicking together, taking long walks, washing the car together on a hot summer day. The activities are limited only by your interest and willingness to try new experiences. The essential ingredients in a quality activity are: 1. At least one of you wants to do it. 2. The other one is willing to do it. 3. Both of you know why you're doing it, to express love by being together. Actually, one of the byproducts of quality activities is that they provide a memory bank from which to draw in the years ahead. Fortunate is the couple who remembers an early morning stroll along the coast, the spring they planted the flower garden, the time they got poison ivy chasing the rabbit through the woods, the night they attended their first Major League Baseball game together, the one and only time they went skiing together and he broke his leg, the amusement parks, the concerts, the cathedrals, and oh yes, the awe of standing beneath the waterfall after the 2-mile hike. They can almost feel the mist as they remember. Those are memories of love, especially for the person whose primary love language is quality time. And where do we find time for such activities, especially if both of us have vocations outside the home? We make time just as we make time for lunch and dinner. Why? Because it is just as essential to our marriage as meals are to our health. Is it difficult? Does it take careful planning? Yes. Does it mean we have to give up some individual activities? Perhaps. Does it mean we do some things we don't particularly enjoy? Certainly. Is it worth it? Without a doubt. What's in it for me? The pleasure of living with a spouse who feels loved and knowing that I have learned to speak his or her love language fluently. A personal word of thanks to Bill and Betty Jo in Little Rock who taught me the value of love language number 1, words of affirmation, and love language number 2, quality time. Now, it's on to Chicago and love language number 3. Our next topic, receiving gifts. And remember, we must express love in his or her primary love language. That's what makes it work. Communicating in the primary love language of your significant other. The 5 Love Languages by Dr. Gary Chapman. Thank you once again, Dr. Chapman.